Okay, we are going to talk today about how to build a bypass or an on-off switch for your record triggered flows. Now, you're probably wondering, why would you ever want to do this? Well, number one, it's best practice. Salesforce does recommend you have a bypass, and the reason is that you don't always want to activate and deactivate your flows. And for me in particular, the reason that I decided to embark upon this project of figuring out the best way to do this is that I wanted to be able to turn off my flows according to object. In other words, I wanted to be able to not only turn off just one flow at a time, if need be, but I also wanted to be able to turn off flows, all of my record trigger flows, possibly, or I wanted to be able to turn off my flows by object. In other words, if I could just do one little thing and say all of my record trigger flows that are running on account will not run, then that would be brilliant, because if I'm doing a bulk update, if there's something going on in my org that some issue, perhaps, I don't know, something could go kind of crazy, and one of the flows is sending out emails or something. I always build things thinking for the future and not necessarily the here and now. And this type of thing is what I have come up with. And this is my flow switch. So what I'm doing, I'm in a record trigger flow, and I am turning off my flow either by object, a single object at a time, or globally, where I can turn all the record trigger flows off at a time, or just one flow at a time. And I'm using automation number, which I'll talk about a little more. That's something I've been doing for years with all of my automation, is assigning automation numbers to my automation. And I may need to turn off a flow for a particular user or a group of users, because record trigger flows don't have that as an option. In record trigger flows, they're going to run based on criteria. And I suppose each one you could set criteria for certain users. But what I wanted was something a little differently than that. I wanted it to run in such a way that if I need to turn off a certain user, or I don't want a certain user to run any flows or certain objects of flows, I wanted to be able to do that. And a custom permission is the best way to do that. So let's go into a little more about what we're looking at here. This is custom settings. And custom settings you get by going to setup, and then your custom settings will show up here. And these settings are what are determining these. I set up as checkboxes, some of these, and I'm using this as criteria in a decision at the beginning of my flow. The reason I'm using custom settings is because custom settings don't require me to do a get, and I'm not using up any SOCKWOL. So they're easily accessible, just right out of the box without any problem whatsoever, and they're super easy to use. I'm going to show you right now. Let's go back to custom settings. I'm on custom permission right now. And I'm going to show you one that's already here. And it's super, super easy to set them. So I have a custom setting, and if I want to make a change, this is all I have to do, is get into manage, and these are checkboxes. So on, off, on, off. I want to turn opportunity on, off, on, off. So basically, by checking this criteria and making these changes, I can turn off on certain objects, or globally, I could have globally where globally all my flows are off. So I could have the setting set that all of them are on, all of my objects are on, but if I click globally as off, then none of my record trigger flows are going to work. Now, I don't know that I'm absolutely going to need that, but I'm building it for the future just in case. Never say never. So how do we go ahead and build this on-off switch for custom settings? So let's do it. Custom settings are almost very similar to any object in your organization. So you get to them through setup and you look for custom settings. And we're going to click new. And then I'm going to name it. And I'm going to use my name, any name that I would say just don't be too long, perhaps, because you're going to see it as we saw earlier in the criteria on your flow. So I just am choosing this name right now. I'm going to call it 2 because I already have one. And on my description, I would want to define, basically what I'd like to do there is decide how am I going to know what is on or off. And what I've done here is I've made a decision that true, a checkbox that's true means that flow criteria is on, and a checkbox that's false means off. Whatever it is, you should put a note here so that you know what you are trying to do here. So now I need some fields, right? And what I want to do here is choose, first of all of the objects that I have record trigger flows running that I'm going to want to possibly control in this manner. So I'm going to do account, and I'm going to set my default as checked. And the reason I'm setting my default as checked is because I showed you earlier that I had decided that true meant on and false meant off. So I'm setting it to, it should always default to on, and then later I will turn it off if I need to, right? That's exception, not the rule. Most of the time you want it to be on. You want your flows to work. It's going to be an odd thing. So I'd like to do a custom object. I've just put the word custom object, but if you had custom objects, you would do the same exact thing. Just name this the name of your object. And let's do now, we have a couple of objects. Now, what I do every time is I do one, and I'm doing again a checkbox. I always do one that is global. Again, I'm being consistent. I'm checkboxing it true. And I'm going to put always in my description what the setting will be here. So in this one, again, it's a true false situation. Now, there's one more thing that I need to do here just to show you how I do it. And that is sometimes I only want to turn off one flow at a time. There are times when it's only a certain flow that I know is going to cause some issue when I'm doing some type of upload, when there's something going on, someone's using an action grid or something and updating a lot of records that maybe some of the records had bad data and they're from like a year in the past, maybe they're from 2 years ago. I don't want to trigger emails to customers when we're making that change and we're cleaning up data. And that would be a good use case that I can come up with. So how do I do that? I have a system, and it has to do with my naming convention that works quite well. So what I do here is I do a text field instead of a checkbox. And I just name it temp off. You can name it anything you'd like. And the length, I only need it to be 4 because I use 4 digits maximum. And what I do is I have a thing that I call automation number on all of my flows. And so what I want to do is turn it off when the automation number matches this field. And I'll show you how that works in a little bit. But basically, now we have all of these fields, and you would keep going on all of the fields that you have record trigger flows. And we have these fields set up. And now I want to show you the settings like I did earlier with the other one. Now you have 2 new buttons. We want this top one. We don't want to set this according to owner. We want this to work no matter who our running user is. And so I'm going to click new. And basically these are our settings. So you see these are set, account, custom object, and global. These are all true, which means if I have an account flow, it was going to run. But now they're all false, which you probably would never do that. You would either go global, off, right, which would turn all of them off, or most likely if you're doing anything, it would be everything on, let's say, and just account off. You would just turn every flow that's on the account object, record trigger flow, will not run when that's off, right? And then here, what I would do is enter the automation number when I want to turn that off. So if I have a flow with a 1021, that flow 1021 will not run while that's there. And then later, if I want to turn 1021 back on, I'm going to delete it. And then 1012 is back on because it's not been turned off temporarily. And then if I want everything running as normal, that would be the default of everything on. Every flow is running. So now this might make more sense to you, okay? So the first thing I want to do is, this is a template. I want to do a save as and save it as a real flow, okay? So 1021, we talked about that. Account, this is my naming convention. Record trigger flow before create update. Okay, so this is my record trigger flow before save for my flow. And I've numbered it 121. So I have established, I want to take off my template, that I have flow 121. Then anytime I'm doing a debug or anything, I will know exactly which flow is running and what I want to do. And then when you're doing this, yep, we're on the latest API. So we're good here. And so now I use that template. And now that I've used that template, and this is to show you how this works. Templates is the easiest way to keep this working properly, this on off. And I'm going to show you how to build this. But the first thing I want to do now, I said I'm running on account. I definitely want it as an account. I have it as created and updated, and I have fast field. So this is all good to start me off, my flow. Now, let's look at my decision. So this is my old flow switch. This is the one that I had pre-existing before we just did our work. And that reminds me, let's refresh this, see if we can get the new flow switch. Remember, we named it number 2. So let's, and this is to show you also how to find it. So to get to those settings, you go to setup. And now you can see I have flow switch 2, right? And there's the original one, the one I had before I did the one as a demo for this session. So here's flow switch 2 account. So I'm going to be looking to that particular field. And so this matches up to flow switch 2, this. Okay, flow switch 2, on off. Okay? So that's what that matches up to. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to switch them all just so you can see how we get to it. And I'm looking for global number 2. And then we're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to look at flow switch 2, temp off. Okay. So our flow that you just saw a moment ago, we named it 1021. So I need to change my setting here from my template to 1021. So what is this saying? Let's not worry about this just for the moment. What I'm saying here is off, okay? On is my default, off. When is this flow not going to run? It's going to stop right here at this decision. Well, it's going to stop if account equals false. It's going to stop if account equals false. It's going to stop, or any of these things could be true, and then it's going to stop. It's going to stop if global equals false. Then this flow won't run. Here's another one. It's going to stop if temp off equals 1021. If temp off equals 1021, everything else is on, but if this is the setting that I have here, and I click save, and that's the setting, then guess what? Only this flow won't run, right? I'm just turning off the one. I'm not turning off everything on account or every single record trigger flow. If I had this, I'd be turning off everything, every single flow that had this type of decision for account would not run. Okay, so that's basically, we're not using any SOQL queries. It's really, really simple. All